Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute. In case you are new here or you are just popping in to see my birth story video, my name is Valerie Kime. My husband and I just had our third baby. We have two boys. The oldest one is 3, second one is almost 2, and then we have a 7, almost 8-week-old. And we had a little girl after 2 boys, and that has just been the most special thing. I honestly feel like I don't even know how to film anymore. It has just been so hard to get back into a routine, but I am going to, for today, just get into the birth story, share the birth story with you all, and then hopefully we'll just kind of, as time goes on, and hopefully I put out more videos, we'll catch up a little bit more. But this for today is just going to be the birth story. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've already seen the birth announcement and know a little bit about our story. It definitely went different than my 2 boys. But just to start us off here, our little girl's name is Vienna Jane, and I will at the end of the video introduce you to her, show her a little bit. But Vienna Jane, and she's named after my mom. My mom's middle name is Jane, so it was really special to be able to use that. Her name is very special to us. It means chosen one, and then Jane means God is gracious, and he was definitely gracious to us in her birth story. And and he answered a lot of prayers. He answered a lot of prayers that we didn't think we were going to have to be praying, but we are so thankful for everything that he has done for us and how far he's brought us. We're thankful for a healthy baby and that I am healthy as well. So let's get into this birth story. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that my boys' birth stories, I was induced both times, and I was overdue both times. And both times were really quick labors. Like, nothing was happening, but as soon as something did start, they were born within 2 to 3 hours. And so that was really, I only had 2 to 3 hour labors before. And they were both vaginal deliveries, and seemingly they just went without a hitch. They were honestly such wonderful experiences, and I'm so thankful for those. So we're gonna get into Vienna's here. I guess I'm just gonna start back here at 39 weeks and 1 day. I had an appointment and I went in and she checked me, and I was 2 centimeters and I was 50% effaced. She did a sweep, and then I went home and I actually did a labor-inducing workout, which I don't know, I feel like it might have worked because I ended up having her 2 days early. But I can link that workout down for you guys below, because I mean, even if it didn't work, it was good to just get my body moving, and yeah, I would recommend the workout. So I went home, did that workout. I had some light spotting in the afternoon, and then I had bloody show, or some bloody show, that evening. So then on March 8th, it would have been Saturday evening, and we were at my parents' house, and I just remember one time I sat down and I just felt something kind of wet, but I was just kind of like, it's barely anything. I don't think it's anything. I'm just going to see. I didn't say anything to anybody, not even Chip. And then nothing happened. I was like, if something is gonna happen, it'll happen, and I'll know for sure if it's my water breaking or not. But then the following morning, which would have been Sunday morning, it was March 9th, I was like, I am very suspicious. I told Chip I'm very suspicious that my water is leaking. And it was never a major gush or anything like that. But it was definitely, I would soak through a pad in like no time, and then eventually it started just, running down my legs, and I knew, okay, this is definitely my water breaking. And actually Chip was getting ready for church. It was Sunday morning. Chip was getting ready for church. He was gonna take the boys, and I was gonna just stay home. And I was like, we live 5 minutes from church, I said, so I will call you if anything changes. But I just felt like, I kind of wanted to just chill at home a little bit. But I was also just a little bit nervous because it had been, at this point, over 12 hours since I noticed my water had started leaking, and I was having 0 contractions, absolutely none. And I also was not feeling Vienna move very much, which made me kind of nervous. So I decided right before Chip left, then I was like, you know what, I might just call my midwife and see what she says. So we called her, and she said, since your water's been broken for over 12 hours and nothing is happening, she said I would just, come in and we'll check you out and see what's going on. And so that's what we did, and I'm really, really glad that we did. That Chip never went to church. I'm really glad that we did it the way we did. So my mom ended up coming over to watch the boys, and then she took them to church, and me and Chip loaded up and we went to the hospital. And it was just such a surreal feeling because I had never gone into labor on my own before, let alone earlier than my due date. Like, this was 2 days early, which I know is not just like any crazy amount of time, but like I was 11 days over with my first and then 6 days over with my second, and induced both times. So like this was such new territory for me. So anyway, we got to the hospital around 9:45, and then when I got to the hospital, by that time I was starting to have some really light contractions, like nothing that I would even rate. And so we got in there, and then Crystal, my midwife, she checked me and I was at a 3 and I was 70% effaced. And to be honest, like I was glad that I had made a little bit of progress, but I was a little bit bummed that I wasn't any further along. I'm not sure why. I should have just been, you know, thankful to have made even that a little bit of progress. But in the moment, I was kind of bummed. But soon after she had checked me, I definitely felt a larger gush of fluid, and I feel like that was probably my water just finished breaking. And after that, I could tell my contractions were a little bit more painful. I probably would have rated them maybe 2 or 3 or something. And I think the reason I was kind of bummed at my progress was because I was like, these contractions already, you know, they're feeling a little bit stronger, and I was just hoping to have been a little bit farther along based on how they were starting to feel. The nurse had told us that Vienna's heart rate was just, she's like, it was pretty high. So they were trying some different things to get it to go down. Sorry, I was distracted. I can't remember where I left off, but I think I was saying that the nurse told us that Vienna's heart rate was looking a little high, and it was in the 190s. It was very high. And so they tried different things. They had me eat something, and they wanted me to go in some different positions, and just they were trying to regulate her heartbeat before they would give me any Cytotec to induce labor. So yeah, at that point they weren't trying to get labor going because they weren't sure what was going on with baby. They weren't sure why her heart rate was so high. They also had me on some IV fluids just to, yeah, they were trying to do everything they could to regulate her heartbeat. So my midwife came in and she, you know, had told me all this. Then she went home. She was like, let's just give this some time, let you labor a little bit. So she went home. I don't even know how long after this it was. This is where I stopped taking notes because this is where things went a little bit crazy. So my midwife came back in, and the words she said to me were, she said, okay girl, I don't know what's wrong with your baby, and I'm getting kind of worried about it. And nobody wants to hear those words from your midwife when you're in labor. I was in super early labor. Like it was nothing that I could talk and everything through contractions. It was just such early labor that I was definitely not in active labor. And what was happening was Vienna's heart rate was super high, and then after every mild contraction that I had, it would just drop really low, and then it would go up high and just stay really flat. She's like, we want to see like big beautiful lines, and that's just not what we're seeing. She said, I just don't know what's wrong. She said it could be something just like her cords around her neck. It could be she's in a funky position. I don't know. But she said she's worried about it. And she said, basically we have 2 options. She said either we could give you Cytotec and have you go into labor a while and do all that, but she would not recommend that. She said the other option that she would recommend is just to do a C-section, because she said if you were at like an 8 or a 9 already, I would 100% just let you have the baby and then we'd go from there. But since I was so early on and Vienna was already not tolerating my early labor contractions, she's like, I think the best thing to do is just have a C-section. And she said that if you would labor for a while, if we'd give you the Cytotec and you labor for a while, it could very easily become an emergency situation where you would need an emergency C-section. And then Chip would not have been able to come back with me. So she stepped out and gave Chip and I some time to talk it over a little bit, and I was just like, I just knew that if I chose the option to have Cytotec and go into labor, it would not be a peaceful experience, because I would be so stressed out and worried about her, and just feeling worried that I'm putting her in danger simply because I'm scared to death of having a C-section. So we decided to go ahead with the C-section. I was absolutely terrified. I mean, it felt so crazy. Like I couldn't believe that this was the way things were going. Like we left home to go to the hospital expecting that I'm just going into labor, and this is so exciting and just on this high, and all of a sudden it turned to just feeling really scared and not sure, like something's wrong with her, we don't know what it is. And it felt like the kind of thing of where it was not an emergency, but it was the kind of thing where something is wrong with the baby and we don't know what, so we just want to get her out. And that's the kind of feeling that it was. It was slightly urgent, but not an emergency. But I think from when she told me that we should do a C-section to when Vienna was born, it was like less than an hour. And everybody still had to come to the hospital yet to perform the surgery. So yeah, that's the reason that we decided to go with the C-section. Everybody came to the hospital, they went over everything, how it was gonna go, and they did a fantastic job, honestly, of just helping us know what to expect. And they did, what I really liked about it was they made sure that Chip knew what to expect and like when they're gonna come and get him, and like they didn't just kind of leave him hanging. They gave me, you know, an overview, but they also gave him an overview of what it's gonna look like from his perspective. So they prepped me for surgery, got us all ready, and then they took me back and they were gonna place the spinal. Sorry, my battery died there. So anyway, they were going to place the spinal, and the guy came back in. He did it, and when he did it, it like twinged all the way down my left leg. It felt very weird. It was the worst feeling, and honestly, I could just cringe, like shiver thinking back to it. But it twinged all the way down my left leg, and I told him, I said, I felt that all the way down my leg, and his exact words were, "Really? Like, what is that supposed to mean? Am I paralyzed forever now on my left side?" I didn't know. I was just like sitting there. And so they laid me down, and my midwife kind of started pinching me to see if I was getting numb at all, and the nurse was literally about ready to insert a catheter, and I was like, I can feel everything, I'm not numb at all. It clearly was not working. So they had to sit me up and do the whole thing over again, and no, it was terrible. I cannot stand the thought of how it felt in my back or anything like that. Can't stand it. But thankfully it worked this time. They laid me down and I was getting numb pretty much right away. But yeah, it was just a very weird, crazy experience. I've never had anything like it. I had never had a surgery before even, so yeah. I can't even remember how long the surgery lasted. It was not long. She was born at 1:19. When I tell people, when I try to explain like how it feels to have a C-section, it's like, imagine holding a suitcase out in front of you and someone's just like rummaging through this suitcase, and you can't feel really anything, but you can feel all the tugging and pulling, and it's just the weirdest feeling. And the guy was constantly giving me IVs for this, meds for that, and I was so nauseous. And yeah, they were like, I mean, yeah, your stomach has just been rummaged through and then sewn back up. Of course you're going to feel nauseous, and I did. I don't know how, but somehow I did not throw up, and I'm very thankful. But anyway, so she was born, and she was right at 7 pounds. So they had a whole team come in because they weren't sure what was wrong with her. They had a team come in just in case, and my midwife told me if everything looks good with the baby, they're gonna leave and we'll bring the baby to your chest while they sew you up, and it will be fine. So what happened was she was born and they thought everything looked good. The team actually left. I heard them all saying see ya, so I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so thankful everything's okay. And I kept asking Chip, is she all right? Is she all right? And he was like, yeah, she's fine. But I didn't realize this then, but I guess the team they had to come back because everything was not fine. Her heart rate was still super high, and she had like no blood sugar when she was born. Her blood sugar was just 0. But once they got her blood sugar raised, that regulated her heartbeat. So once they got those two figured out, that was fine. But then her oxygen was just so low, they could not stabilize her oxygen. And she was just very mucky, because like when the baby goes through the birth canal, all that fluid kind of gets pushed out of their lungs and everything. But with a C-section, that doesn't happen, and so it's a lot harder to get all of that out. And it was not getting out, apparently. So they were over there working on her, like, I don't know. And I didn't know this. I didn't know what all was happening, because I kept asking Chip if she is all right. And he would say yes, but he told me later, he's like, she did not look all right. She was like as limp as a feather, like as limp as you want to make. She just wasn't really moving, and they were working on her, trying to get her to breathe, and it was just I feel so heavy when I think about that, because Chip had to see so much more than I did, and I just know if I had seen everything he did, I don't know, it would have felt way more traumatic than what it already did. They never were able to bring her to my chest. I actually didn't get to hold her until the next day, like that afternoon, evening, the following day. So they sewed me back up, and they took her to the nursery, and then they took me back to my room. So they took her to the nursery to keep working on her. And then they took me back to my room. I don't know how long, how many hours it was. It was quite a few hours. And then the decision was made not by my midwife, but by the lady that specializes in babies. Like the woman, one of the ladies that was part of the team that came in. I'm not sure what her exact title was, but she made the executive decision that we are going to transfer her to the NICU because they just couldn't. I guess my hospital, which is Pomerene, they're a pretty small hospital, and they don't have the staff and all of that to be able to keep a baby on oxygen long term. They're not a big enough facility for that. And they just weren't sure how long it was going to be before, you know, she was breathing. And anyway, so she decided we're going to transfer her to the NICU. Chip and I can't, like, I think one thing and he thinks another, so I'm not even quite sure what was up with this. But when I asked the ladies, I said, is this a life or death situation? And she said no. But when Chip says, when he asked that, the answer that he got was not as of now. So I really don't know, like maybe they were telling him that and then not telling me everything, but he said that was definitely the answer and the vibe he got. But then later when I talked to my midwife after everything, she said it was never a matter of life or death. So I don't know why they weren't, I don't know. Maybe at the time they didn't know that. I just really don't know. I'm not sure why it feels like we both got two separate answers on that. But anyway, so she was transferred to the NICU. And I wanted Chip to go with her because I did not want her to be by herself. And so it happened that he went to the hospital with her. He spent the night up there with her, and my mom came to my hospital and spent the night with me. It was just such a roller coaster of emotions. I wanted nothing more than to just like cry my eyes out. I just wanted to cry, but I could not because I was in so much pain from my C-section, and if I would cry, I would have not been able to even handle the pain. It would have been, you know, it's an abdominal surgery. So I literally could barely cry. And it was just, of course, it's emotional to not have your baby there with you. It just feels like literally a part of you is missing. But it's like next level when your husband can't be there with you. I don't know. It's just, Chip was just my only source of comfort in that in that moment, in those moments after birth. And for him to not be there at all with me that first night of recovering after a C-section, that was just really, really rough. I had really sweet nurses for the most part. My last nurse, I was not a fan of her. There were a couple things that happened with her that really, she just made me feel dismissed. Did not appreciate that, but I'm not even going to get into all of that. But it was just a very emotional process, and it makes me really sad thinking back to it. We're 7 weeks postpartum now, and I'm definitely at the point now where I don't cry about it every day. I definitely still do cry about it, but not every day. All right, I had to take a pause to feed her. Now she's just all relaxed. But yeah, I think I had just said that, you know, I don't cry about it every day anymore, but it's definitely, yeah. We're so thankful for the outcome, and that we had a healthy, now have a healthy baby, and that she's fine. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a grieving process to, it feels really sad that I didn't get the experience that I had with the boys. I would have loved to be able to hold my first daughter on my chest as soon as she was born and just be on that high. I never felt that high after birth from her because it was just scary and stressful, and we weren't sure if she was okay. But when she went up to the NICU, the nurse told Chip that kind of what to expect. She said if everything would go perfectly, and she said it's a big if because babies are so, you know, unpredictable, but if everything goes perfectly, she will probably be out in 3 days. And she was able to be discharged in 2 days, which was just absolutely wonderful. She did phenomenal up in the NICU. Passed all her tests and just was able to breathe on her own then, but we are so thankful. I was able to go up the next day. My hospital did a fantastic job of just making sure that I was discharged as soon as I could be so that I could go up and be with my baby. And I got to go up there and do skin to skin with her and hold her. I held her for just a really long time, and I mean, we held our boys for sure when they were born, but like she's just been held a whole lot more as a newborn, just because I just feel like I missed out on those precious first moments after birth. And yeah, so I definitely hold her a lot more just because of that, and it's caused some anxieties and just that kind of thing. as you might imagine. But so basically we found out later they were doing some tests on my placenta, and it turns out that I actually had an infection in my placenta. I cannot pronounce it, strepto something. It's basically a sort of like another form of the group B strep. So I'm not sure, like what makes me wonder, my nurse had told me, she said I'd have to double check with your midwife, but I think if you'd have another baby, you would need to be tested for that specific infection. And if it would be positive, you would need to have an IV during labor if it's anything like group B strep. So it's something I want to ask my midwife about. I have a follow-up appointment really soon here, but I want to talk to her about all this. But what it makes me curious that if I would have had her vaginally and nobody knew I had this infection, could it have been passed to her? And it could have caused a whole other skew of problems that, I don't know, I just feel like the C-section was just, as much as it scared me and I didn't want that to happen, I feel like that was God sparing her and just protecting her from something worse. I feel that way. I want to talk to my midwife and just see like what that infection means. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a stressful process to get her into the world. But she's here and we're so thankful. I'm going to let you see her a little bit. So this is little Vienna Jane. Now she's awake, sort of. She has just been such a sweet little baby. Poor thing, she's gotten a little bit fussy when she hit the 5 to 6 week mark. I think she's been a little bit struggled with some reflux and had some stomach issues. So that's not been fun, but she's just the sweetest little thing. We love her so much. So I'm basically now just at the point where I'm trying to finish processing how everything went. The best way that I know to do that is I've been trying to just write everything down. And you know, as you write things down, you think of different details that maybe you forgot about or whatever it may be. You know, then I'm just trying to pray through it all and just give it to God. It was definitely not the birth experience I was hoping for, but I also am so thankful that I was able to have 2 perfectly normal vaginal deliveries with no complications. I am very thankful for that. So, you know, I've experienced both worlds and now I can relate with, you know, other moms out there too that I couldn't before. So, but yeah, it was just definitely such a crazy experience. I mean, I didn't even mention, but the first time that, like, right after she was born, they held her up over the drape, but my drape was so high I could literally hardly see her. So I really didn't even get to see her until they brought her back into my room before they took her to the other hospital. Before they took her to the NICU, they brought her back into my room so that I could see her. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because I hadn't really processed everything that had happened, but I just kind of thought like they're gonna bring her back in here, I'll get to hold her before they go, and just, I don't know why, but they brought her back and she was in this incubator all strapped down, cords on her, you know, breathing machines on her and just everything. I just don't know why I wasn't expecting that. I mean, of course, I knew they were working on her that whole time, so I'm not sure why I didn't expect that, but for whatever reason, I just had in my head that, you know, I'll get to hold her and it would be a lot more relaxed. But so that was, even just that alone, seeing her like that, it was really something I had to work through, because I mean, you just don't want to have to see your baby in distress like that. It's just the most heartbreaking thing. Not only is there the physical recovery from a C-section, but even just the emotional aspect of it all has been so hard to navigate, and it's just something I never expected. I keep getting interrupted by my 3-year-old and I feel so scatterbrained with this video. What was I saying? The emotional recovery. It's something that I'm probably not going to really deep dive into online, especially now when it's still so fresh, because I just don't really want to put my raw emotions and feelings out there on the internet for someone to pick through. So that's not something that we'll be doing right now. But the only thing I will touch on as far as emotions go is that if you are going through this same thing, if you had an unplanned or an emergency C-section, something that people told me a lot was, at least your baby is okay. And while that is a very true statement, we are so grateful for that. That's an obvious given that we're thankful for that. But it doesn't really help me process what I just went through. And what you really need during that time is for someone to just listen and, you know, understand what you're going through. But I just want to encourage you and tell you that 2 things can be felt at once. You can be very thankful for how far God has brought you and for saving you and your baby, but you can also be grieving the process and this experience that you weren't expecting. Space can be held for both of those. And I think that was just something that I didn't realize really. I just felt guilty feeling upset about my birth story, but it's okay to feel both of those things at once. There's definitely room for 2 emotions at once. I think I'm going to wrap up this video. Give you one last look at her. Say hi. Oh, she's such a doll. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you're still here, props to you, because I feel like this video is going to be pretty long. But thanks so much for listening today. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you hopefully soon. Bye!